we are joined tonight through our alumni speaker series with LeCena Jones. She is a 2005 alum from the Fayette campus, and she is a triple major in criminology, sociology, and English. And so, LeCena, welcome to our speaker series this evening. We are so delighted to have you here. And I might add, almost Dr. LeCena Jones. I know you will talk about this a little bit later as we get going. But yeah, that is quite an accomplishment. So I know you'll talk a little bit about the process and kind of what has gone on in your life. So I know that there are several things that you want to talk about tonight, but before you do that, I just want to again thank you on behalf of the university community and on behalf of the alumni office. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your evening and providing a little bit of insight to mental health. I know that is the larger, broader topic that you want to talk about tonight. So we appreciate you taking your time this evening. And I would just encourage, I know I put it in the chat on Facebook Live, but I would encourage anyone that has any questions for LeCena this evening to please drop them in the comments. And as we go about the discussion tonight, I will be asking those as they come through. So I encourage you to drop those in at any time. And then even later, if you're looking to connect with LeCena beyond the presentation tonight, we'd be more than happy to get you connected in that way as well. So please feel free to drop any questions or comments you have in regards to her topic. So LeCena, we're just going to kick things off. I know that there's several things that you wanted to talk about this evening, but first, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, thank you for having me. UIU is my home. I am a graduate and alumni of UIU Fayette campus. I went on to get a master's in family and child counseling and a master's in public administration. And now I am working on my doctoral degree, 10 months left. Thank you, Lord. I am a mommy to an amazing teenager when she wants to be, and to a fur baby. I still live in California. I live in Los Angeles, and that's really it. I own a business, and I'm currently engaging in some research, and I teach at a university here. So that is it.
Okay. I know that one of the main nuggets that you want to leave others with tonight is that your foundation at Upper Iowa is the key in helping you achieve some of your successes. I know we've talked about that quite a bit. Can you talk a little bit about why you decided to come to Upper Iowa and why it's been such an integral part in your career within the mental health field?
Yes, I actually, Coach Bill Wilson invited me to UIU to be a part of the basketball team, which was wonderful because I wasn't really that great. So it was a nice invitation. And he actually really laid the foundation, him and my teammates, like, be a role player, be a team player. And so at UIU, I feel like I got the opportunity to meet other people from different coasts, different ethnicities. It was a really diverse campus. And I got to be a part of a community, like a sense of community. And I also got pushed to try things that were outside of my comfort zone. So I think the support, the encouragement, even the conflicts, the experiences, the love, the support, and just, people like Daryl and Louise and Kari. It was just so many people, Deb, that were super supportive of the students there, that it taught me a lot. I got a lot of training there on soft skills. So it was great. And it was integral because I wanted to support people like I had been supported. So it was good.
Is that one of the reasons why you went into the mental health field?
It is one of the reasons, yes. I think more importantly, it was one of the reasons that I knew I could go into this field, because UIU was the first experience I had where I learned that I had an extraordinary skill set. So a kid from, an inner city school, low socioeconomic status, UIU really, I didn't feel different when I got there. And each year it felt more and more like it was my school. And I still keep in touch with the family that I met at UIU. So it was good for me.
That's great. There are many different aspects of our mental health. How has the mental health field changed since you graduated from Upper Iowa? And what have been some of your biggest struggles and accomplishments so far in your career?
Ooh, so the mental health field is steadily changing. I think one of the things that has changed that's been most significant is the stigma around having mental health needs. And so I think since I've left UIU, just the spotlight on wellness, self-care, emotional health, those are things that that have been like welcomed into communities, not just of color and conversations amongst organizations, but just the whole person, the total individual. That has changed a lot. In fact, the first time I heard about wellness was a wellness wheel that Debbie Roth introduced during my college sim class. And she laid that foundation, planted that seed that there are 6 areas of health and wellness that an individual needs to pay attention to. And so since then, I think that the field of mental health has become all encompassing. It's also a priority to not just communities, but organizations, families, individuals. And the trajectory of the field is such that we're now seeing mental health starts as early as infancy, right? And so it's really cool to see that that is steadily growing. There's so much research that supports it. And one of the accomplishments and successes that I've had is not just attempting to establish a business where people can come and get the support and help they need, but becoming successful in a way that we're allies, LGBTQIA, BIPOC. We're allies to the communities that we serve. We're allies to people across the financial spectrum. And so it's been a huge accomplishment, and it feels like a success for me because I have my own community now, like my own that was curated by and for me, thankfully, through God's grace, that I can go to and get a sense of healing and even pour back into that space. So it was a huge accomplishment establishing it, but it's been a great success in the sense of it growing and hitting milestones every year. And even my UIU family, like supporting me through that when I'm calling them in the middle of the night, like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do. We need 2 more staff, like just the amazing support that I have so I can extend support to others. It's just huge for me.
It's a community that continues to grow, and it sounds like you're helping to build that community, which leads me into my next topic here. You wear a lot of hats in the line of work that you do. You are a licensed marriage family therapist, and so correct me if I'm wrong in any of these things that I'm talking about. You're a licensed marriage family therapist in a couple different states. So you are in California and Texas, from what I understand. You run a company that focuses on wellness and mental health. You're an adjunct faculty as well as a dual doctoral student. So can you talk a little bit about how you're able to balance it all? And what do you feel like what do you do when you feel like your own mental health is being tested?
Ooh, how I balance it is actually a journey that I'm still working on, but I do a lot of to-do lists. And one of the things that's super helpful for me is like, for anyone who's ever read like the Traits of Highly Effective People, there are really wonderful ideas to separate things into categories. And so for me, because I'm visual and I love Post-its, I write things on Post-its based on the category of like, this needs to get done. It'd be nice to get this done. This needs to get done in 30 to 60 days. And as I accomplish them, I pull them off. So it feels like I'm getting somewhere. So even if I have to add something to it, just removing something from it is helpful for me to say, okay, like you're not just spinning your wheels. But then also I have learned that I'm just not one of those people who can take a day off from their routine. Like, I can't do cheat days, because then I cheat weeks and months and then have to start all over. So I have to be consistent in the routines that work for me. I have learned this year to ask for help. I have amazing office support staff, amazing colleagues. And I call him my therapist, but he's my closest friend. And we met at UIU, and I ring his ear a lot. So I think if you can build a routine, build some consistency, and have like a community around you, and maybe like one or two people who can call you to task when it comes time to it. And my daughter's really wonderful at that. My grandparents are super supportive. I think it really takes a team for me to be successful in the things that I do. And I have that, and I'm grateful for it. So that's how I manage my mental health. And usually one of the people closest to me will call me out on my behavior if my mental health is not how it should be. So like if I'm irritable or if I'm snappy, they will say, hey, like, you seem irritable or snappy. And that kind of love is very supportive for me as well. So it's a combination of wellness and self-care, but then also the people I keep in my circle that help with me staying in a good space.
Okay. I know that you have the organization that you have in Texas and California. Can you talk a little bit about what that organization is and how it is helping others, and kind of what your mission and goals are behind that organization?
Yes. So it's got a super long name, but we call it Triple J. It's Family Counseling and Professional Services Group. And what we do is a couple of things, actually, a few things. So we do provide direct individual, family, child, adolescent, couples counseling. We do therapists. I am so blessed with an elite team of clinicians. Like, they are all creative, they're highly intelligent, they're funny, they're spiritual, they're encouraging, they're non-judgmental. And so we help people achieve access to who they believe they are or want to be. We help them to get into alignment with maybe their spirituality, or get into alignment with the behaviors that relieve stress or cope with trauma. And then we also do trainings. So we create trainings and facilitate them. And then the trainings that we have, if an organization needs them to be tailored, we do that as well. We have contracts with public health agencies, with educational facilities. We train social service organizations, especially when it comes down to burnout and self-care of their staff, but then also culturally competent, trauma-informed care. So we do a lot of work with making sure that our communities have the support that they need. Our mission is always just to help people in the way that they need it. But then also we do scholarships, we pay rent, we may do date nights for couples who are in crisis, pay for childcare, and we do it without all the red tape. So typical community mental health services often require families to kind of jump through hoops, and that can be off-putting for families who are struggling, especially this last couple of years with the pandemic. So we've been really able to bless people without increasing the amount of stress that they're carrying. So our mission is really to operate in purpose with passion, but then also the vision is to reach as many people as we can, as many families, as many systems of care as we can. So that's really what we do.
Was this something that you've always like kind of dreamed of, having your own organization, or was it just something that you kind of fell into the further you got into the programs that you've been doing?
So I actually did not see myself doing this. I wanted to be a Supreme Court judge. I was going to go to law school, and life happened. And it's been really cool to see that sometimes what's ideal to us is not ideal to God. And, I'm really learning to trust the process. And so I didn't fall into anything. It's all been step by step and methodical and thoughtful, but it's also been a lot of like doors opened and like, why don't you walk through there and see what happens? So one step at a time, it's been built. And so we're going into our 6th year, January 1st. And so that's huge for us. So it's been a lot of work, but I honestly can't say that I regret the paths that I've taken.
Okay, wonderful. And switching gears a little bit here, what are 2 to 3 strengths and qualities that you look for in people going into your field, and what are some ways that our students can work to develop some of those strengths?
Ooh, 2 to 3 strengths. The first is, are they teachable? Because we work with people who, by the time they come to us, there's a lot of hopelessness, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of worry, and you have to be open to learning that maybe your way is not the right way for someone looking for your help. So are they teachable? But then also, do they have compassion? You know, oftentimes, especially in the communities we serve, compassion is a really undervalued skill set. It's also an undervalued strength, and people mistake or interchangeably use sensitive with compassionate. And I think that if a person is compassionate, they're open to learning and they're open to asking questions. They're definitely inquisitive, definitely okay with receiving feedback. Then those are strengths that I think would benefit people who need those things themselves. And as far as like preparing to go into this field, the awareness of what it looks like to help someone on their own terms is huge. And then also looking at your own trauma history, your own needs, your own hurt, your own pain, and seeing how it's manifested itself, and whether or not this is a field that can help you resolve those things is something that needs to be explored too. Nobody gets into our field to make $1 billion. That just won't happen unless you're a corporation. But well, yeah, I have my own thoughts about the direction of like technology and mental health, but really self-awareness, working on self-awareness, asking people how they receive the individual, like learning about you and how you impact others is huge. So I would encourage people to start doing that kind of research for themselves: is how am I received? How do I impact others? What are my trauma triggers, my past experiences? And what am I willing to confront the things about me that are uncomfortable in order to help others? So yeah.
You kind of, in that response, you kind of answered a little bit of the next question, but I'll ask it anyway. What are some ways individuals interested in your field can help prepare themselves for their future career? So I know you kind of talked about that in the last answer, but are there other ways that those interested in going into mental health counseling or any kind of counseling, psychology, social work program, what are ways that individuals interested in that can help prepare themselves for beyond college?
I definitely think going to at least one counseling or therapy or group therapy session themselves and seeing how it makes them feel. Also sitting in their emotions and seeing how that feels. But then also inviting themselves to explore what sends them off the deep end into anger and frustration and irritability, like really just learning about themselves in a way that they can say, oh, this thing is what brings anger, this brings frustration. And then being realistic about what they want to do in the field, because you can be in mental health, but not be a therapist. There are so many hats that you can wear in this field that I also encourage them to be open to exploring alternatives.
Okay. Career readiness is a pretty hot topic in career services and within higher education in general and among employers as well. What competencies, I know we've kind of talked about the NACE core competencies through the organization that our office belongs to. We've talked a little bit about what those are. What competencies do you feel are most important in helping excel in one's career goals, and why?
Ooh, you know what's interesting is I know we talked about them, and I think that they shifted a little in the last few weeks with all of the legislation that's passed, all of these different policies, different political issues that are going on in terms of court cases, because what we're seeing is the mental health professional, the leader, the person who's in charge, the policymaker, there are certain competencies that they need in terms of being able to communicate difficult information, being able to say what's going to be helpful and what's unhelpful, and then being able to deliver that across maybe communities with diverse populations. So definitely communication and how they're communicating and being able to receive feedback and reciprocate feedback. I think those leadership qualities, definitely being open with leading groups of people into new spaces. I think that those are some competencies that are helpful, but then also being open to change, flexibility. So flexibility with regard to skill sets, having soft skills and being open to learning new skill sets. Yeah, I think those would be some areas. In terms of specific competencies.
I know that when we've talked, communication has been one that you have kind of stressed pretty frequently.
Yes.
How is communication valued in your profession, and is that one of those competencies that is going to rank pretty high up there with what it is that you do and who you work with?
Absolutely. So thank you. Communication is huge because you can be a wonderful communicator, but if the person is not receptive, then you're going to be a pretty poor communicator, right? So communication is super significant in the sense of how are you communicating? What are you communicating? To whom are you communicating? And how do they receive you when they're receiving your information? And so just being aware of those things, effective listening as a contributor to communication. And then also written communication. We're so used to texting and DMing that oftentimes your communication style comes across in how you text. And that's not effective when you're working with people's lives. So being open to having flexibility in the way that you communicate, especially the way you communicate in written form. And then also being aware of how someone received your information versus what your intention was, and being open to resolving any conflicts that arise from different communication styles. So I think just the gambit of communication aspects is a competency that needs to really be explored in any field, but specifically one where people take what you say and then they put action behind it. So.
Okay. How would you encourage others to improve upon those skills, and specifically like the competency of communication? How would you encourage others to improve upon those so that to ensure that they are career ready when it's time to move into the field?
I definitely think that reading is helpful. And Professor Starson, Mel Starson, that's at UIU, she gave us a book my freshman year about effective listening. And I've kept it. And I must admit, I did not crack it open as often as we were supposed to. But it's so helpful when you become aware that we're not trained to listen well. And so if people can practice listening well, so that they can understand where a person is coming from, understand what they mean versus what they're saying, become comfortable with asking questions, become comfortable with not having a rebuttal initially, and just taking time to say, hold on, let me process what you just said. You know, like having the willingness to be incorrect and to ask clarifying questions and really be present and focused in that moment. Like, those kind of practices become habit and they become integral to effectively communicating, even when resolving conflict. So I think that those are ways, like reading is super helpful, reading about effective listening, listening and actively listening, but then also becoming okay with conflict. Oftentimes we communicate in a way that's conflict averse, and that's not very helpful. So becoming okay with addressing conflict in a kind and gentle way, clarifying, asking questions, making sure that you are hearing what a person is intending to share. And then also acknowledging if you mistakenly understood something, or if you misunderstood something, or if you misperceived something. Communication is really an intimate thing. And so becoming okay with the emotional response that comes along with the different types of communicating, I think like all of those are ways that a person can become ready to advance in their career, because you're going to come across people, populations, teams, groups where communication is a must. And so you have to be fluid in it.
As a young professional in your field, did you ever come across any situations where, you know, you were meeting with a client and you just weren't quite sure how to handle that particular situation, or kind of what the next steps were going forward? And how did you process that, and how did you continue to help that individual moving forward with whatever their particular needs were?
In my field, honestly, I think the experiences that arise for me, tied to your question, have mostly to do with other professionals. I was working with someone once, and she flat out looked at me and said, "I didn't know anyone could have that much useless education." And, you know, every every opportunity I ever wanted to take to use profanity in the workplace, I felt that energy. I really felt that energy come up. And I had to look at her and say, okay, like I didn't have a response, or the alternative response, I did have a response, but it was laced with profanity.
Not one that you could have used appropriately, I would imagine.
Yeah, no. And one of the things about communication is I have learned to articulate discomfort and frustration in a very non-threatening way. And so when I'm unable to find the words, I just say, okay. And so for me, having that experience, when another person on my executive team or my leadership team says something like, "Oh, you have a bunch of useless education," to me, I had to hear, "Oh, she has an issue that we need to discuss." Because initially I heard, "You have useless education, like you have no point on our team." And so for me, I had to really like come back to that issue later and just communicate with her the experience I had, clarify, like, did you intend to say that I was useless? You know, I had to hear her response without the voice in my head saying, just jump across the table. You know, I really had to learn to communicate the impact that someone had on me, so that I could check in with this person and say, is this what you meant? Because this is how I'm taking it. And while she didn't mean it the way I took it, the experience that we had moving forward was one of, now I can come and give you feedback whenever you say something that's completely offensive. So, I mean, it definitely is helpful to have conflict around communication, because you learn how to address it. But yeah, I think that one's going to stick with me to the day I die.
That just goes to show that conflict management is another one of those strengths, another one of those qualities that students also need to make sure they're learning a little bit about and having a little bit of experience in, because obviously that played very well into that particular situation and how you handled that as well. I just want to put it out there again that if you do have any questions for LaCena, please drop them in the comments on the Facebook live feed and I will ask them. So before we wrap up tonight, are there any final pieces of advice that you would give to Upper Iowa students, our alums, and the university community before we close things out?
Well, I definitely would tell the UIU students now, appreciate the campus. Because I see, you know, it's funny, I see pictures of it. And when I talk to like my peers who we all went there and we graduated, I'm like, did you see the new building? Like, did you see this? Did you see that? Appreciate the environment, appreciate the time, live in the moment, appreciate the people who are pouring into you. But then also to the university community, I encourage you to ask the students who are the quietest how they're doing. So even if they're not making a fuss, even if they are making a fuss and they're the happiest and you see them all the time and they're in student leadership positions, ask them how they're doing, And I definitely would tell alumni to be open to positioning themselves to communicate with the students who are still on that campus and then visiting it and going back, because it's definitely a family. We all have UIU in common, And so I think just being open to pouring into that community that UIU is for us, those would be the things that I would say.
If there are individuals that after this evening's talk that wish to get a hold of you to be able to network or connect with someone within their field, are there ways in which our students or UIU community are able to connect with you, and kind of how would you prefer them to be able to reach out to network? Obviously, they can connect with our office and we can provide them with your contact information as well. But if anyone is looking to reach out to you directly to maybe talk a little bit further about some of the things that you talked with us tonight, or just kind of reach out to you in general about your experiences and how they might be able to follow in some of the things that you have done, how would you encourage others to connect with you?
They can absolutely shoot me an email. And it's LeCena Jones 8807@gmail.com. So it's
drop that in the comments on
wonderful.
Facebook so that individuals can be able to get that as well as they are watching it a little bit later too.
Coolness. Yes. So that would be the way.
Okay. And then, yeah, like I said, individuals can reach out to the career development office, to Nikki or myself, and we'd be more than happy to provide them with your contact information. I do not have any further questions. And so, LaCena, I would like to thank you so much for joining us this evening and for shedding a little bit on mental health and kind of how it has affected your life and how you continue to make an impact in others. Thank you all for joining us on the speaker series this evening. We are taking a break in the month of December, but we will be back in the month of January, and we hope that you will all join us again in January. Have a great night, Peacocks.